Now, I'd like to introduce you to a dear colleague of mine, Doug Ritter. We've been longtime colleagues. He earned his BFA from the Philadelphia College of Art and his MFA from the University of Maryland. He's widely admired for his complex, intricately crafted paintings, as well as for his representational drawings. In fact, one of his drawings has been included in the definitive final edition of Dr. Betty Edwards' book, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, which is the most widely published book on drawing. He also does work as a graphic designer and has developed and maintained websites for local organizations like the P-Town Art Association and Museum, the Piamet Performing Arts Center in Truro, and the Haiti Project. He sits on the board of South Wellfleet's Neighborhood Association centered on historic restoration. And he's received numerous awards and grants, has had lots of solo exhibits. His work is in private and public collections. His history and teaching is extensive, having taught painting, drawing, and color theory in premier art institutions. We're very lucky to have this thoughtful, inspiring artist at 4Cs, where he works his magic on our students. Take it away, Doug.
Oh gosh, thank you so much, Marie. And it's so nice to see everybody here. And I'm so appreciative of our community and of Cape Cod. And it's been a tough time for a lot of people since COVID. And I think we were situated in a very nice way with community and health. And I'm very happy for all of that. There's a point which I want to give a shout out to. There are a couple people here. Some of my students are here and I'm so happy for that. And it's our students actually who are the college as well as us, and their contributions and their ideas are informing me in my work at the college. And this is my Zoom studio. There's some of my two-dimensional design students work right behind me. And we're making it work as well as we can. Paintings and works of art, I think, are better as primary, having a primary representation. But due to the times here we are, and making language around objects that can be seen as having their own integrity, their own eminence into the world. And as viewers, we situate ourselves in front of them and bring them back to life again. So I brought out a painting. My guest artist's name is Todd Hebert, and he was a fellow at the Fine Arts Work Center when I was working there as an administrator in, I think it was 98, 99. And it's a wash ashore painting that I found, and I've been in touch with Todd. He couldn't make it today, but it was a great way of making a connection. And I chose this painting. I have a companion piece in the show too, which I think it's on the tile. It's a little pattern painting. But I chose this painting. It's extant. It was in a painting rack with a lot of my abandoned works. And when I thought about this painting in relationship to COVID and to culture, and it's a little washy, a little pixelated. There's a lot of fine detail in drawing that's not coming through on my screen. But it's this kind of raccoon energy that's like tied into culture. It's a Christmas tree, apparently. But there's there's something dangerous and sort of terrible about this too. And I'm not sure if you can read all the forms in the painting. There's a candy cane and little Christmas ornaments, little sparks and stars. There's a wreath of broken teeth that's going around this sort of tail appendage of this raccoon. But it was this tumultuous, tumbling space that had a kind of a magic. And in COVID, in last spring, you know, we stopped around midterm with our in-person classes, and I was spending a lot of time here in Wellfleet, and I'm surrounded by a lot of nature, and it's kind of interesting too, because the humans were in hiding, but the animals are actually really more present in my environment, and it was very interesting. The biodiversity that we have here, all these treasures that we have on the Cape, but the animals too, one of the things I noticed about them too, that they're tied into our behaviors, our compost piles. We have a lot of micro habitats that are very, very small. You know, there's a friend of mine who's a lepidopterist who studies little vernal pools and measures how many moths hatch each year out in the dunes. We're situated in a very unique way. So I wanted to bring something in that was about nature. I wanted to bring a painting that was robust and illustrative. The painting is about 5 feet by 5 feet square. And I like the rhythmical quality of this work. It's just like, I just tumble when I see this work in person. It's just like I'm falling into this nature culture kind of mixture or admixture. So I thought it was fantastic. And Todd's work, I think we have some staged, and Todd's gone on to make more primary works. I want to tell you a little bit more about Todd too. I have a bio up here. You have to give me a little patience. So I'm going to read to you a bio. So Todd has a BFA from the University of North Dakota, MFA from RISD, and he was a fellow at the Work Center, as I mentioned. He did a core residency program at the Glassell Center in Houston, which is a museum residency program, an amazing place. And has gone on to exhibit in Los Angeles and in Houston, where he has a show at the Devon Borden Gallery that's coming up later this year. So I chose Todd's work again, the idea of nature and culture. And what I like about his work, that it's essentialized and it's very pared down. And there's a very strong message in his work. And when I first saw the work that he had developed, his work at the center, he was pouring polyurethane in layers and doing watercolor on top of them and sanding them a little bit, and another layer, another layer. They were very physical and very heavy kinds of objects. And then he went on to produce these paintings that have a very obvious and kind of direct message about culture and nature. And, you know, I think of artists such as Todd or even like Damien Hirst, who like oppose very portentous and huge things about existence, like biology, versus say, you know, mustard and ketchup on your French fries. You know, so he's getting to something I think that's very, very interesting to me. Also his use of focus and how things are in focus and out of focus. These kind of supreme compositions, they take a little bit of thought, but that's the work I wanted to present. And it really started with the raccoon painting and the painting that I exhibited. And I thought there was a relationship between that work in terms of palette, also as well as maybe some of the meaning. And I believe we have a couple of paintings staged behind the scene. I want to thank Vana and Brian and Kendra, our Tilden crew too, who are behind the scenes, like with all these mechanizations, making this kind of fantastic. Oh, terrible slide. I'm sorry, you guys. So I started doing these small abstract paintings when I was the coordinator at the Fine Arts Work Center. It's a huge bureaucratic job, a lot of fun. But I had a hard time finding 10 minutes to sit down and sustain you know, my attention in one work of art. So I started painting on shingles and I started engaging in narrative. So they really started as a division of space, and I have some idea in mind or some title for the painting or some experience that I've had. So they do connect to the visual field and memory. This is a painting of a kayak. It's called Kayak Day. And a friend of mine in P-Town, Pat DeGroot, got me started in kayaking in 1990. And actually in 87, my fellowship year. And Kayak Day, sorry, went on. Here's another one too. So dividing space, there's no figure or there's no ground. I'm looking to try and animate every inch of that board. These are on plywood boards. They're about this big. They're face-size paintings, as Helen Wilson would tell us. Her paintings are face-size paintings. And My friend Pat as well did smaller paintings, but it was a nice way of having a format that was consistent, very easy to make. And so I had a stack of plywood, cut in squares and prime them all, and I could just go from one to another. And I'm continuing that work today. So these are earlier ones. This one's called Harbor Bass, and I'd like to stay here for just a second. If you can see, there's two triangles. I don't know if you get my mouse over here. There are two triangles here. This is my friend Pat's house, and I've been kayaking out into the very end of Cape Cod, Long Point, or even beyond to the buoy marker, and looking back, and I always had a direction back in terms of this twin peak house, which sits between the ice house and the Catholic church. So it's kind of like, it's getting dark. Oh no, here comes some weather, but I can make it back from Long Point that way. So there was that memory and that experience and that kind of joy. And the elements of the shapes in the painting are they're very primary. I teach a two-dimensional design class where we're dealing with circle, square, triangle, straight lines, very primary form elements and making compositions. And I like working with them too. And what I'm trying to do is set up a kind of a trigger or a signal, like a semaphore, like a little flag that might direct you to some kind of experience or memory. So I think I ask a lot of the viewer. We can go on. The next one I think is they become more non-objective in a way too. This one is, these are very pasty paintings. I apologize for the quality of the slides that I submitted, but another one too, let's stay here for 1 second. And the idea here was of a pier. This one's called Pier of Tide. So I have a structure and armature. It's like my jungle gym or my playground. So I have a way just by making a cross in a painting, all of a sudden I'm in. So I don't have any hesitation. I can work on these for 10 minutes. I can sit down and work on them for 3 hours. And this practice in these abstract paintings has been so helpful to me in COVID. And I think for a lot of us, perhaps time alone and time in the studio is not unfamiliar. But I think a lot of people in the world, in our culture, are suffering a lot more than people who are maintaining practices. But the idea I had here was that it was a peer situation. So I'm moving my attention up and down through the composition and defining forms as like semaphore flags or architectural forms, etc.